Yeah.
Newegg, it's great timing because we were
This
about
is
to
a
talk
Steve
about,
thing.
something
Yeah.
that this is a news item that broke when Steve from Gamers Nexus published this video showing gigabyte power supplies quite literally catching on fire. Not one, not two, but three. I love that. I love the security camera footage mixed in there. That's absolutely beautiful. So, what's happening here? And now, the problem for me is that as someone who doesn't know exactly how the Newegg shuffle works, I was not able to independently validate this. But so I'm going to say allegedly, Newegg has been bundling these power supplies, the P750GM and P850GM, with in-demand graphics cards as a way to dump them onto unsuspecting consumers. Based on Steve's analysis of these power supplies, they are extremely dangerous and unsuitable for consumer consumption, but they are allegedly selling them anyway and trying to kind of shift them out to people who might not be savvy and or might be desperate to get their hands on a graphics card. Now, that stuff that you saw in the video, let's just go back and let's watch that again. This is not supposed to happen on a correctly functioning power supply. This should be impossible. Power supplies are supposed to have a ton of safety measures built into them. Everything from overcurrent protection to overvoltage protection to undervoltage protection, short circuit protection. It is not supposed to be possible for a power supply to literally spew out sparks and light on fire in that manner, and it's dangerous for obvious reasons. It's supposed to be inside an enclosed metal case, but the reality of it is there are plenty of people who put non-metallic things inside their computers, little stuffies, things like that, and there are also other parts of the inside of your computer that could potentially be flammable, things like plastics. So whenever one of those things doesn't trip, that's what happens. You end up with power supply go kablooey. And it's not just dangerous to your house and your body, it's dangerous to the rest of your components as well. When a power supply dies, it can very easily cause a surge or a spike in voltage that will damage connected components. So you could lose your motherboard, you could lose your CPU. The power supply is directly connected to every component of your computer, and in an ironic twist, you could lose the graphics card that you were trying to buy when you got this bundled power supply. Steve and his team were lucky enough; the sparks didn't go anywhere, and they were not just lucky, but they were wise to be attentive when they were running a power supply test. So that last one that's on their security footage, you can actually see they have the unit hooked up to a load tester. So they were very wise to be sitting there monitoring it while it was running, but you might not be so lucky. Now, here's the thing. It is unlikely that in the course of regular use, most gaming machines would trip any one of those protections. Most gaming rigs pull only a couple hundred or a few hundred watts under full load, except for one small problem. Those power supplies are being actively bundled with some of the only GPUs on the planet that could potentially trip those kinds of protection circuits.
Which is epic.
That's the problem. Aside from, trying to move out a bad moving product. Now, to be clear, this type of strategy is not a new thing. I remember having a really irate conversation with an NVIDIA rep a long time ago, where I basically went like, I was like, yeah, we had a great quarter. We moved X number of these. And they're like, I don't want to hear about how many. And I forget exactly what graphics card it was at the time, but it was when NVIDIA was really struggling. I think it was, was it Fermi? It must have been. NVIDIA was really struggling during the Fermi generation. Or was it, was it 280? Was it pre-Fermi? Can't remember. The point was, we were talking about like NCIX. One of the anomalies, one of the weird things about it is they moved pound for pound a ridiculously disproportionate number of high-end graphics cards. You know, $600, $700 graphics cards. Remember when that qualified as top of the line? They moved a ridiculously disproportionate number of them in the country for how many people live here, for one thing, and for the size of the business that they did overall. Like, they were kind of like a boutique PC integrator in that way. And I remember getting this like irate answer back that's like, well, how many, whatever the equivalent back then of like a GT 1030 was. Well, how many of those have you moved? Unless you guys can get your numbers up for those, I'm not going to be able to get you any allocation of the good stuff. So the point I'm trying to make is that it is extremely common for brands and retailers to bundle together hot moving items and other items, whether it's something that is overpriced, and so you're trying to mask the overpricedness on one thing with a discount on another thing.
Yeah.
Whether it is undesirable, hopefully not whether it's dangerous. So yeah, usually overpriced or otherwise undesirable. Oh yeah, and the last reason that you might try to bundle things is because you're trying to hit some kind of quota. So the way the MDF programs work for companies like NVIDIA's, if I recall correctly, didn't work this way, at least for us. But I know for a fact that Intel's did. The way it worked was you had certain quotas that you were supposed to hit for certain either SKUs or product segments. So K, for example, at NCIX, if we sold a 2600, we were like, yay, we made $6. But if we sold a 2600K, all of a sudden, yay, we made $6. But also, it contributed towards our quota that we had to hit to get our MDF or our marketing funding that we could spend on activities like NCIX Tech Tips. And by spend, what I mean is it's money that you get allocated on the back end from Intel, and you put it towards approved marketing exercises that you then pay yourself for out of that pool. It's very common. And before the chat blows up, no, it's not exclusive to Intel. AMD has basically the exact same program. Don't kid yourself. Microsoft's program was excellent as well. So that's how you actually make money. I mean, if you're ever wondering why you go into the mom and pop computer store on, Main Street or whatever, and their prices suck and they have no stock and no selection, well, that's why. Because if you don't hit a certain type of volume, you're not a player, and you're not going to make any money because all you get is the upfront profit. You don't get the back end that actually drives profitability in this business. So this practice is not uncommon, but to do it with an item that is unsafe would demonstrate either abominable ignorance on the part of Newegg and Gigabyte, or at worst, malice, because selling a product bundled with a product that is the most likely thing I can think of to make it fail in the way that would be very bad is terrible. With that said, there are certain manners in which a power supply can be loaded that are extremely unlikely to occur in the real world. So the odds are, if you have one of these power supplies, it's not going to blow up immediately. But the question becomes, do you really want to roll that die? And for me, the answer is no. And the pun was definitely intended. Get it? Roll that die? Because it could light a fire and you could die. Luke's not listening, but it was a very funny joke, and he would have laughed if he'd been paying attention.
Sorry, I'm looking into something ridiculous. Apparently at 6:29 in the video, and I had to reaffirm this a bunch of times, and the reason why I wasn't listening to you right there was because I was listening to it. But these extremely unstable power supplies that it's bundled with, if one of them pops and you want to RMA it, you have to send in your graphics card as well.
Really?
So they're sending you something they pretty much know is going to become garbage, because like over 50% of the feedback for the graphics card on Newegg's website is people having failures. It's 54% of Newegg reviews is people talking about failures. Apparently it pops at like 60% load. They're just ridiculous. They know it's going to die. And when it dies, you just have to keep your garbage, or you have to send your graphics card back.
Oh, wow.
This is
So
obscene. Like, holy what the heck?
that would indicate that we
That's
are
that sounds like fraud.
that they're very well aware of what was going on, which is
I believe this is like a previously standing thing, like all bundled things have to be returned
yeah.
together no matter what,
So
even
that
if it's an RMA of one of them.
was a policy at NCIX, but only if you were returning the item, not if the item was actually faulty and you
So
were RMAing it for a replacement. That was never the policy that you had to return both items.
so that's what I was kind of asking in the chat is like
Yeah.
if you're returning it for a replacement, is this still the case? But